welcome everybody. My name is Randy Brown. I am delighted to have the opportunity to be here today with friends, with families, fellow U of M grads, U of M students, faculty, staff. Thank you all for braving the cold to come out and hear us have a conversation about health and humor. It wasn't that long ago that Marc Cendrowski and I had a conversation, a very highbrow conversation. I think maybe it was Buffalo Wild Wings?
Yeah.
Is that right? Research. Buffalo Wild Wings, we talked about what it meant to be a physician, what it meant to maybe be a doctor with humor, and also who are the folks that it might possibly help. And I think you had the boneless.
Yes.
With the Oriental, right?
Yeah.
The Oriental barbecue sauce. So, but anyway, we dreamed of this, and we decided about 2 years ago to put it together. Last year didn't work out, but here we are today. This conversation is really for you. We're going to have, some slides. It's going to be a multimedia presentation, but more importantly, we're going to have questions and answers and questions, and any question is fair game. Marc Cendrowski and I are delighted, though, when we were having that conversation, we're delighted to have a special guest. So we couldn't possibly think of a better special guest, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. But we are going to talk a lot about family. We're all a family here, whether you're in the center, the school of public health, the university. We're a family here, and there are two people, I think, definitely, that I want to say a few words about. Mariana Manikas has worked on this for 2 years and helped Marc and I put this together. She works in our center. Just wave your hand, Mariana. Thank you very, very much for helping us out. And the other person, I'm going to wait for a bit. She may know who she is. So when Marc and I were talking about the special guest, we wanted to have somebody who had an insight to both humor and insight to both humor and health issues. And back in the day, when the University of Michigan's first comedy club was established, it's called Laugh Track. It was established in the fall semester of 1980, and then started going strong at the Michigan Union every Wednesday night in the winter semester. Back in the day, one of the headliners, who was a first-year MBA student, was a guy by the name of Marc Jaffe. Well, Marc went on to not initially pursue his MBA. He headed out to LA. And in LA, he met success. In LA, he went out there with his MBA and soon was an author for a lot of TV shows, a writer for TV shows, including this little show called Seinfeld. And Seinfeld episodes that you may be familiar with, feel free to YouTube these. These are three of the more famous episodes that he authored: The Pick, The Limo, The Bookstore. He became a playwright, continued to author, moved back to Cleveland with his wife, Karen. Now, Dr. Karen Jaffe is a noted obstetrician and gynecologist in Cleveland. And, life was pretty amazing, according to Marc, as they brought up their three beautiful daughters. But a few years ago, 2011, Karen was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Now, Parkinson's disease is a movement disorder. You may be familiar with a couple of folks who might have Parkinson's, like the guy in the middle. Family Ties, Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox. And what Karen and Marc did was to establish a foundation that's based on humor, that deals with issues of chronic disease, called Shaking with Laughter. And we are absolutely delighted to have Marc Jaffe here with us today to talk about his perspectives on health and on humor and on life. Marc, will you please stand up and come to me? Family ties. Family ties. So it turns out that the Cendrowski family, Richard and Helen Cendrowski, had 4 children. Right? 4 children were unique. They each had special talents. They were bright. They were active. They were engaged. One of them, other than Marc, is here today. Dwight Cendrowski, where are you? Please raise your hand. Dwight Cendrowski. If you don't recognize him in person, there he is.
Oh, jeez.
Dwight is a noted photographer. He has done photojournalism around the globe. He's based here in Ann Arbor. Does great work. And so each of the siblings, real special, real unique. And then there was Marc. So it turns out, we figured out early on, and for the medical students that are here, I'm going to take you through Diagnostics 101. So the early years were quite subtle. They were quite benign. It was an undiagnosed condition. Notice that it's cute, but for the medical students in the audience, you'll notice the slight upturning, well, I can't point to it right now, the slight upturning of the lips, the smile in the eyes, and when you apply the Richard Pryor technique, what you see is that the haircut forms a smile. And clearly, both Richard and Helen had a sense of humor. Now, progress to high school. So in high school, Marc and a couple of his co-conspirators decided to enjoy comedy. Remember, these are the days when Saturday Night Live was just starting. It's 40 years old now. So this was about, I don't know, Marc, 75 maybe? 75, 76, 77. And he's clearly starting to get that humorous angle.
Yay!
We go to the college years, and several of the folks, never mind that youthful-looking guy in the middle. But, you know, from 9 o'clock, there you have Marc with the Laugh Track t-shirt on. Next to him is Teresa Savage. There is Woody Held at the top at 12 o'clock. And then there's Katie Held, Kevin Crowley at 3 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock, Bob Perry. Maybe the first Big Bang. Clearly Marc having fun. We knew also at that time that those good days couldn't last forever. So Marc headed off shortly after this. This was 1981. After that last picture was shot, he headed off to LA to join this guy, who was his high school best pal, one of his high school best pals, a guy by the name of Dave Coulier, who was a stand-up comedian in high school, sought his fortune in LA, did all right, joined a couple of shows, including Full House. So he was Dave Coulier back then, Dave Coulier, but a friendship that had formed from a long time ago, a friendship formed in humor. So those are the early years, and I just thought that you ought to know a little bit about background, just who you were dealing with, before Marc talks about so the more recent years. Please welcome Marc Cendrowski. So before I turn the show over to Marc and Marc, I want to share with you a couple of things. The Patch Adams question was offered by Noreen Clark, and she sadly passed away suddenly last year. But 2 years ago, when we were talking about this lecture, she was the former dean of the School of Public Health here, a world-renowned public health figure. If you go outside in the hallway there, her portrait is up there in the middle. She said, you know, Randy, I think you and Marc are onto something. She said, maybe humor is a tool that can be used for not only disease management, maybe humor can be used for wellness. And she asked, might it not make sense to place this humor tool, if it has proven health benefit, might it not be helpful if we put it in the hands of all healthcare stakeholders? Specifically, Noreen was interested in talking about patient. Yes. How might it improve a patient who has chronic illness or who wants to maintain wellness? But the family, the clinician, the doctor, the nurse practitioner, the nurse, the physician assistant, etc., the health coach or the health educator, the community, the workplace, and the health system. Think of it as medicine, if you will. Medicine that might prevent, or medicine that might treat, if dosed properly. And if dosed not only from a qualitative amount, if it's dosed right to fit the individual variation of need, but also quantitatively. Right? Is it the right medicine? So let's consider for a second the tools that we might have to work with. We know in this house, the School of Public Health, that there's a lot to disease management, more than just medicines, more than just sort of the newest therapy. Really, that if we're going to be effective and folks are going to do well, they have to think about behavioral issues. Will folks actually take medicine that you're offering them? Education. It's one thing to try to offer education, but do folks change their behavior because of that education? So there's a lot that goes into that. And so what I wanted to provide you is an example of, if humor is a tool, what might the responses be? What might the cognitive, emotional, behavioral, and physiologic responses? So I thought I'd provide this definition for you. So a smirk is a slight, often fleeting upturning of the corners of the mouth. You saw that in early years Marc Cendrowski. Okay? Completely voluntary and completely controllable. We have the smile, and we know what that is. We know what the grin is. The snicker is defined as the first emergence of sound with facial muscles, but still controllable. If you hold in a snicker, though, it can be dangerous, building up gas, etc. There's the giggle, we know what that is. There's the chuckle, which involves chest muscles. So now we're talking about muscles of respiration. Breathing is a good thing to do, and a good thing to do well. And the reason why I mention this is because we know that yoga plays a big role, has played a big role in complementary therapy and helping folks with wellness and with treatment. It's all about muscles of respiration. A lot of it is core muscles of respiration. Well, a good chuckle now and then is a good idea. We have then the chortle. Some of you may not be familiar with the chortle. The chortle originates even deeper in the chest and involves muscles of the torso. So we're talking about obviously maintaining your core here, which is a good idea. Usually provokes laughter in others. And then we have the laugh itself. And then there are others, which include the cackle, the guffaw, the howl, the shriek, the roar, and then danger. Danger. You convulse. The body, when you convulse, is completely out of control in a fit of laughter, and extremities are flailing aimlessly, balance is lost, you're gasping for breath, you collapse, you fall off your chair. And then die laughing. This term requires no further explanation. So there you have it. You're equipped. A final word before I pass things off I think we're going to start with Cinder. A little bit about the studies. And please feel free, if you're interested in these studies, please feel free to write us. We have these available for you in PDF fashion. So there have been a lot of good studies about all of this. Short-term memory studies, improvements in older adults who are subjected to concentrated humor therapy. These are well-controlled, well-designed studies. So this might be something that I might want to enjoy if I could remember to do it. Depression relief, that makes sense. There have been immune effects noted with laugh therapy, with humor. Namely, some of the cytokines that influence some of our chronic diseases like rheumatoid arthritis that produce these cytokines, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, are significantly reduced in subjects who receive concentrated, specified humor therapy. We know that laughter can be good for your heart. What's an interesting observation is that while there are plenty of studies that have looked at people dying while watching sporting events, you can't find case studies of folks who are actually dying laughing. So even though we have that term, die laughing, it happens very rarely. There have been studies looking at the relaxation of the vascular bed and the lining layer, the endothelium of that vascular bed, when subjected to measured doses of humor. Further, from an immunologic perspective, there is sort of enhanced natural protection. They're natural killer cells that fight off cancers and the like that are enhanced with a good laugh. And it just makes us feel good. There's a lot of endorphin production that makes us laugh, allows us to have a good time. And you know what? I think it's something that we should consider for each of us. I would particularly invite those of you who are in a position, a teaching position, when you're in a position of mentorship, if you are a medical instructor or a public health instructor, to think about these tools. I think if done right, obviously, there are inappropriate times, but there are very appropriate times that allow humor to be a two-way street, to open communication, closing the social distance, if you will, that allows, for example, doctor and patient to become closer and allows that patient perhaps to accept the advice of that doctor a little bit better if they can see a humor in a given moment. And I don't think that there's anybody better to address humor than somebody who has, for the last 7 to 8 years, been the lead director of the country's, the world's most popular comedy show. Marc, since 2007, has directed over 150 episodes of the award-winning show, The Big Bang Theory. We're delighted to have him back home in Ann Arbor. Marc, take it away.
Thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I wish I would have known about some of those pictures, because I think it would have changed my speech a little bit. So while I'm talking, you'll just be... That's fine. Great. I'm just going to give a quick little history of what I've done, why I'm here today. I graduated in 1981 from the university, majored in film and television, and that summer moved out to LA to seek my fame and fortune. I was fortunate enough to get some work early on. I worked entry-level positions on different shows. I was a runner and a PA. I was getting lunches for people, delivering scripts, doing whatever I could to make a living. Eventually, I worked as a personal assistant for a lady named Barbara Corday, who eventually became the president of Columbia Television. And while I was there, she helped me get into the Directors Guild of America in the mid-'80s. I got in as a stage manager, worked on a couple of shows. I eventually worked my way up as an assistant director, associate director on a lot of different shows, and became a full-time director about 20 years ago, almost exclusively in sitcoms and situation comedies, and ended up the last 8 years doing The Big Bang Theory. And I look back when we first started talking about this and realized how important comedy has been in my life. It's something I've done my entire career, always been involved. People want you to do dramas or films, and it's like, why? I have the greatest job in the world. I get to make people laugh and get paid for it. It's sort of like when you hear that rookie ball player go, I can't believe they're paying me to play a game I love. And that's kind of how I feel every day. And when I look back and did some research on this, I realized, you know, it had always been that way. In grade school, I can't believe you had some pictures from there, Dave Coulier and I were best friends. He was the class clown in school, in grade school and high school, and I was what I called myself the prompter of the class clown. I would tell him things to do, say, hey Dave, try this, why don't you do this? He would do them, get in trouble. I would go, hey, I had nothing to do with it. And I was Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, and I got away with it. We continued that in high school. During lunchtime, we would do sketches, bits for ourselves, try to make each other laugh, try to make teachers laugh, doing impressions of them. We eventually started doing announcements in the morning where I would write them, he would do his cartoon voices. And it was just something to look forward to and realize what a great way to kill some time during the day. Eventually, at the end of the senior year, we decided to try and make some money at it. We did a couple of comedy shows, sketch comedy shows, featuring some stand-up at a couple of schools because we wanted to make money to pay for prom. And they were both successful. The first one we had over 1,000 people at, which was kind of a scary thought back then for stupid high school kids who had no budget, no idea what they were getting into. This continued on in college, realizing that I'd like to make people laugh, like to be involved with comedy. I realized I don't think the sciences or the mathematics fields are really my calling. And I majored in film and television, took a lot of creative writing classes, and the entire time trying to do things to be funny. On all my papers, on cover sheets, trying to make jokes, trying to do different things to make myself stand out and just make life a little easier. The entire time I was in school, I kept doing stand-up with my brother Dwight, who was introduced, and I just have to say he is an incredible accordion player. A medical facility like this, incredible accordion player, maybe in an emergency room or something. But we kept doing comedy the entire time and eventually started a comedy club, as it said, Laugh Track, who I did with my wife, Cindy Glazer, who's here tonight. She was a member of the University Activity Center. We got together, decided to start this club. It ran for, I know, 7 or 8 years after we had left, and it was very successful, and realized this is a great life. And so when I got into comedy, I kept doing it out in LA the entire time. And when we started talking more seriously about this, I started looking back and doing some research of my own on how humor helps. And I remember reading in Reader Digest for the older generations, you know, humor is the best medicine, and reading jokes in there. And I've got a couple of examples that I just want to say on how this show, that particularly Big Bang and all the shows I've worked on, really do touch people and touch a chord, and why it's important for the talk here today. Even the first one was just Friday. I was giving a speech or a lecture like this to the film and video students, and they had also invited physics students, chemical engineers were there, anyone interested in Big Bang. And afterwards, a physics student came up to me and said, I just have to thank you. He goes, my mother loves the Big Bang, and he was a fan too. And he goes, but she had no idea what I did. I looked at you. She didn't understand physics. She didn't understand the world. She didn't understand what I was like growing up, why I was into certain games or gaming, and why I liked, you know, Star Trek movies or Star Wars. And she goes, and he said after she watched Big Bang, she came up to him one time and said, I get it. It was a great bonding experience, he said, and he was like so thankful for it because it was a way to express himself without him having to do it. And more specifically, what this year particularly, Johnny Galecki, one of the who plays Leonard on our show, is an actor who's very involved with the Sunshine Kids, which is an organization that deals with children with cancer. Every year he brings out groups from the clinics or from the area in LA to the show to meet the cast, take pictures with everybody, ask questions. And it's absolutely amazing to see these kids, and they look so forward to coming. And inevitably, for every year that he's done it, we get calls weeks afterwards from the organizer saying, these kids are still talking about it. They were so excited. It just was such a relief from the mundane things that they had to deal with, whether it was treatments, medicines, or just pain that they had in their lives, or things not to look forward to. This was something that they could latch on to and just love doing. And they were on a high for weeks afterwards. And it was just amazing to realize that this show has that kind of effect on people. I see it whenever I go travel around the world or across the country. People learn I work on the show, and you just see them go, oh my God, I can't believe you work on that show. What's it like? What's it like? I love that show. And another example was we do a lot with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And every year we have children come out. This year was, in particular case, the child, a young boy about 10 or 12 years old, was confined to a wheelchair by this point. And the family came, they met the whole cast, they brought him on the stage. And his father picked him up out of his chair to put him in Sheldon's spot. And he sat in that spot, and the smile on his face, and he yelled at the top of his lungs, "This is the best day ever." And his mother started crying behind the camera, and then Kaylee Cuoco, like Penny, started crying, and then the cast started crying, and everyone in the crew started crying. And it was a beautiful moment. You realize, how much he has, and how much little time he has actually, and how much this meant to him, and the family, again, couldn't thank us enough. And you realize the power that a show like this has, or laughter has. And the last example I want to give real quick, before we show a couple of clips, I hope, is this year, a friend of mine's boss who lives in Palm Springs, my friend called me up and said his boss's wife had a terrible stroke in the fall, almost passed away, but was recovering, and during her recovery, she was a fan of The Big Bang, and they went out and bought every season on DVD, and they used that for her therapy and for her rehab. She watched every episode, everything on the DVD over and over again, just for the mindset to get her through the day and the rehab and to get stronger, and what she had to do to not think about the pain and everything else, but it was a focus on something better. And I heard this, and I was like so taken aback. He had asked if I could get tickets, and I said, well, my God, of course. They're coming in from Palm Springs. I said, please tell me a date where we can get them out here. And what the husband did, which was great, was he told his wife that he'd gotten her tickets, and she started freaking out like people do. And he said, but you can only go if you're strong enough to go. He said that was the stipulation. And he said, she doubled down on her efforts to get better because she knew she could come to the show. He said, I want you to be walking on your own when you get there, and we don't want any special treatment. And she said, you got it. And her efforts just to make herself get better were incredible. And they came out, I think it was the end of January. She came out, she was walking with a cane, and the smile on her face said it all. And she enjoyed the show. She couldn't stay long afterwards because she was so tired from laughing. And it just, again, the letters and emails that I got 4 weeks afterwards, saying, thank you so much, it meant so much. She is still buzzing about it, still talking about it, still telling her friends, still showing the pictures around to everybody. And I just realized that's part of the reason I want to come here today, is how important these kind of shows and laughter can be in people's lives. And it's something to think about all the time. I'd like to now just show... So I hope you're fans of the show. I'd like to just show... All right, good. I just want to show some clips, things we've done with medical problem situations on the show through the past. You can sing along if you would like at certain points. Feel free, but this is, I think, about 5-6 minutes. We're going to show just a couple things. Sorry we have to do it this way on YouTube, but my DVD got screwed up from Friday's class. So, here we go.
Can you sing Soft Kitty?
What?
My mom used to sing it to me when I was sick.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, honey, I don't know it.
I'll teach you.
Soft kiss.
Quick look, we can go to the next one.
Yep.
Howard Wolowitz, Simon Helberg, with an incredible 2.5 hours of makeup to do that little 20-second bit.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, Mark, there are those moments in healthcare where you see something and you say, holy crap! But you can't really say that to yourself, right? But
I did, a weird thing. I did see that once. A quick story. Sitting, remember, my son was about 1.5 years, 2 years old, was running in the living room, holding toys, and fell and didn't want to let go of his toys and landed. And bit through his tongue. Almost, I know, I'm sorry. This it's really funny though. It's really funny, really. And we, it was terrible. The blood, and we're trying to stop the bleeding. We call our pediatrician, and they're like, "Don't worry, tongue, but people, it's a heavy bleeder. It's in the, don't just bring him in. It's okay, don't worry." We got the bleeding stopped, rush him in the pediatrician, and she's like, "Don't worry." She sits down and opens his mouth and goes, and we're like, "Oh, this is not good." Immediately called Children's Hospital, rushed him down there, had surgery. 16, 18 stitches to close the wound. It was not good. So every once in a while, it's okay to see a doctor go.
I had one of those moments when I was a resident at Boston City Hospital. I was in the emergency room. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. Bad weather outside, whatnot. And so a guy comes in with abdominal pain. I said, "All right, well, let's get an X-ray of your abdomen, Mr. Jones, and see what's going on. Not sure what it is." He said, "Okay, I can do that. I really need some help, Doc." I said, "All right." So we get the X-ray, come back. I take a look at it, and there is, those collapsible umbrellas? There's an umbrella in his GI tract. And so I said, "Mr. Jones," I said, "number one, why didn't you tell me about this?" He said, I wasn't sure about it. And I said, "Well, how, can I ask how you got the umbrella there?" And he said, "Well, it's raining outside." No. So, anyway, there you have it. That was one of those. Holy. That's what happens when it rains outside. Okay, I'm going to get to the next one. Okay.
Next time, take your own advice. Excuse me, could you help us out?
What do we have here?
I slipped and fell.
Yeah, we get that a lot. What is this?
It's a robot arm.
Where's the rest of the robot?
I only built the arm.
You need it, right?
Can you please just help me?
All right, hang on. Stay calm. I need an orderly with a wheelchair. I got a robot hand grasping a man's penis. I'm sorry, we don't have a code for robots.
That's what controls the arm. But it's frozen.
Did you try turning it off and back on again?
No, you see, it's more complicated than that. No, wait! Winnie the Pooh is out of the mother tree. Now can we have cookies in the line punch? You were right.
We can do
This one's up.
one more.
One more? Yep. And there's one more after that.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, you know what? Why don't we do the one after this?
The one after this?
Yeah, we'll do one more, the one after this.
Okay.
If that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Soft kitty,
sing along.
happy kitty, sleepy kitty, purr, purr, purr.
Thank you, Sheldon. That was very nice.
Want me to sing it again?
No. The fourth time was
Is there anything I can get for you? Some apple juice, some Jello.
no, thank you. But I do have a favor to ask.
Name it.
Well, I'm booked to do a children's party tomorrow, and frankly, I don't feel up to it.
No, you're not. You look awful.
Thank you. Anyway, I mean, you know my act better than anybody. I was hoping that maybe you could fill in for me.
Are you saying that you want me to be Professor Proton?
Yeah.
Oh my! What an honor! Oh, this is like being asked to ascend Mount Olympus and dine with the gods.
Or a Korean family in Alhambra.
But they'll know I'm not you. Should I call myself Professor Proton Jr.?
Sounds great.
So, in a way, it's like I'm your son.
Whatever.
Father.
Sure, what the hell.
And so with that, I just realized, wanted to bring some of the clips that we've done when dealing with medical devices or in situations like that. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to turn my little bit over to Marc Jaffe now, and we'll be answering questions at the end. So if there's ideas, questions, anything you want to know about the show or what we do, we'll be answering them right afterwards. And I'm going to hand it over to Marc.
I like the way they arranged it. They said, let's show clips of the most popular TV, and then you can go on. So, well, it is, I appreciate Randy and Mark inviting me to this, and I just thought I'd tell a little bit about my story and what's recently happened to me related to shaking with laughter and my wife's diagnosis. Let's say you're informed that you have a degenerative progressive condition. You learn that you're going to be losing brain cells, your eyesight will start failing, your hearing will start failing, you'll lose your balance, and those are just some of the symptoms. Other ones are that you will start driving 24 and a 35. You will start yelling at the neighbor kids to get off your lawn. You'll start wanting to have dinner at 4:30 in the afternoon. You might start getting the urge to vote Republican. Guess what? You guys have it. It's called getting older. We all have it. And yet we can laugh at it. That's the amazing thing. We laugh at our diminishment. We laugh at things that are on the face of it we think so terrible, and yet we are able to do that. How can we do that? Francis Bacon, who's a person that comedians always turn to for said, imagination was given to men to compensate him for what he is not, a sense of humor to console him for what he is. And I think what we laugh at most is reality. We laugh at the truth. And we laugh at aging and death because it's something, a universal experience. We can all relate to it and find some humor in it. One of my favorite things, pieces of comedy is the 2,000-Year-Old Man, Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. Go listen to it if you haven't. And at one point, Carl Reiner asked Mel Brooks, as the 2,000-year-old man, to explain the difference between tragedy and comedy. And Mel Brooks says, it's all point of view. Tragedy is if I cut my finger. Comedy is if you walk in an open sewer and die. And that's a variation on what Groucho Marx said a long time ago. He says that if you slip on a banana peel, that's comedy. If I slip on a banana peel, that's tragedy. So we understand how difficult it can be to laugh at something that you're going through, something difficult that you're going through, whether it's a disease or anything. But when my wife was diagnosed with Parkinson's, we were able to look at some of the funny things that were going on. And in part that's because of how my upbringing was and being a comedian and mining my relationships and my life for humor for many years. I wrote a book which has some of those funny medical stories. My wife being a gynecologist, it's called Sleeping with Your Gynecologist. Tales from My Marriage to an OBGYN, which we have here, and you guys can pick up a copy afterwards. And part of the money will go to Shaking with Laughter. So I've done that, and so having something like Parkinson's was just another thing that we thought, oh, you know, I can find the humor in this. And much of it is therapeutic as well. You know, I write to, as I think a lot of creative people, whatever their medium is, they do things, whether it's painting, music, anything, they do it to kind of relieve what they're going through. And so I started doing that with the Parkinson's and making notes of the funny things that were happening and putting them together. And it's amazing how you can look at things and it's just point of view. We had a conference that my wife was interested in going to about Parkinson's, and we got the brochure of what the classes, lectures were going to be. And you can look at them and think, God, this is so sad, this is terrible that we have to worry about these things, or you can look at them and laugh. And I have a few of them that I have written down from them. Freezing of gait in Parkinson's disease as sensitive to doorway width. So you're telling me this disease, I not only need a doctor, I need a contractor. High incidence of impulse control disorders in Parkinson's disease patients with sudden onset of sleep at the wheel. So let me get this straight. You're suddenly asleep at the wheel and you get the urge to shop. Now we've seen the sleep would take care of it. Stiff man syndrome. Bad. Sleep-related falling out of bed in Parkinson's disease was a lecture. I'm not sure exactly what's causing you to fall out of bed, but we think it has something to do with sleep. Just stay awake the whole time. Reckless generosity in Parkinson's disease.
Reckless generosity.
If you're having trouble with this, please contact the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So there were all these things that, you know, it's a matter of how you look at things and want to take your attitude. So I was writing, and the most immediate thing that I could write was stand-up. I was still doing some stand-up, and the problem is we were keeping it a secret. Actually, Randy said Karen was diagnosed in 2011. She was actually diagnosed in 2008. It wasn't until later on that we went public with it because of her position as a physician and surgeon and Moyle. You don't know, Moyle is, my wife was a Moyle. Moyle is the person who does circumcision in the Jewish religion. So pretty much every circumcision that you go to, somebody makes a joke about a shaky Moyle. Moyle with Parkinson's, and here she was, ironically, faced with the disease. So we saw a little bit of irony in that. But we were keeping it a secret, and so I had no real outlet for going. I couldn't go up and say, people knew my wife in the community, and if I would go up and say, my wife has Parkinson's, and here's the funny things. So I called a friend who's an actor in town, a comic actor, and asked him if he would perhaps go as my beard and start doing some material. Actors are deathly afraid of doing stand-up for some reason. So he wouldn't do that, but he did offer to, he said, if you make it a play, I'd be happy to do it as a play. And we had an opportunity at the Cleveland Public Theater to put something on. So I went back to my wife and I thought, oh, that would be a good idea. And she said, oh, well, that's great because we can fictionalize a little bit, and then we're a step removed, and it'll be okay. And so I started writing this play that ended up being called Side Effects May Include, about all the crazy things that happen to us and the drugs, the effects of all the medications that one has to take when taking Parkinson's. And so we have a few of the clips here, and I'll explain the story as it goes along. The first thing is kind of, it's a lightly veiled version of our lives, and there's the comedian. It's a comedian whose wife is a doctor and is diagnosed with Parkinson's. His name is Phil, and it's a one-man show, so he plays all the characters. And here he is just, they're looking into some anecdotal cures, or not cures for Parkinson's, but at least to improve the symptoms.
Moving around for anecdotal cures on my laptop and coming up with all sorts of things that are supposed to help. You know, dancing, singing, boxing, playing drums, forced high-speed biking, knitting, and taking a foreign language. It's like Parkinson's is the ultimate self-improvement disease. Come on, honey! Okay, next time. 99 buffaloes, I went to ride them. Here's the matching sweaters I finished, and look, no Parkinson's.
So you can see all the pill bottles around there and the various medications that she has to start taking. And Phil's act was a lot about their marriage and after being married 20 years, lack of sex life, and his frustrations with that. And what happens is they find that some of the medications that his wife has to take have a compulsive sexual result, so that his wife is hypersexual all of a sudden. And so he is now, their sex life changes quite significantly. And he talks about it here. You can find it. 817.
Before Parkinson's were equipped, there were certain requirements for sex. Maggie's job had to be going well. Our daughter couldn't need our attention. The house had to be between 74 and 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And the Democrats had to have control of at least one house of Congress. Now the requirements are my wife has to have a job, our daughter has to be alive, the house has to be standing, the temperature needs to be between 0 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Democrats have to have control of at least one house of Congress. These things happen all the time! They're going to the table!
I'm trying.
PG-13.
So he's very happy with the situation for a while, but as it continues and as her medication is increased because it's a progressive disease, her cravings continue to make more and more demands, and as a 50-something-year-old guy, he's not able to keep up with her, and so he has to go search for some alternatives and some help, and he ends up seeing his doctor, and the doctor is for prescription, Viagra, Levitra, Cialis, all those things.
I heard about this daily Cialis. You just take it every day, and then you're always good to go. What about that? I am not certain that you need a daily pill. How often do you and your wife have sex? On average? on average, per week, on a week, 7, 8 times. Ooh. I did not realize the severity of the problem. I will write you a script for all 3. You tell me which one works best. 7 or 8 times. Sweet.
So basically, as things get resolved in the play and to some degree mirrored in our actual life, the break came eventually when his wife decides to reveal the secret and come out to the community. And you know, what happened in real life was we started this play ended up being our first event for Shaking with Laughter. It had a run in Cleveland, a run in Chicago, and toured a bit around the country, and was able to, part of the proceeds, raise money for Shaking with Laughter and research. And at the same time, my wife and I founded Shaking with Laughter. We like to say she's shaking, I'm laughter. And the goal is to raise money for Parkinson's research through events that had an element of humor. So the play was one thing, and then we went on to mime Mark and my friends Dave Coulier and many other comedians that I met over the years, and put on events in Cleveland. And every year we try to have an annual like comedy and music or just comedy. So Dave came in for our first event. We've had Wayne Cotter, Jake Johansson, Wendy Liebman, and last year we had Brian Regan. All wonderful comedians who've all donated their time for us, and we've been able to raise about $700,000 in 4 years. So we feel very honored to be able to have done that, and it's something we haven't done alone. Obviously, it takes a community, but we think part of it was our attitude and looking at humor and trying to see the bright side and optimism. And as much as I love Groucho Marx, I think he got it wrong. I think comedy isn't someone else falling on a banana peel. I think it's us. And laughing at our own frailties keeps us human and helps us meet our challenges with grace and strength. So.
Well, now is the opportunity for you to ask any question. We're amongst family here. We're amongst friends. Both Marks said this is their favorite part of the presentation. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time, plenty of opportunity to do that. We'll definitely take the next 15, 20 minutes or so and go through some questions and answers. So.
And you too, you have to answer questions too.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. I do want to point out that, you know, we keep talking about family and friends. You know, I proudly work here, and, you know, we have so many close relationships here where we do a lot of the type of laughter that these two guys just talked about. So, Kosar and Adriana and Mariana, we met before. Lara and Megan are in the back. Nancy Jans. I know that Noreen would have loved this, Nancy. Right? She would have absolutely loved this. We didn't have much to laugh about a year ago, but I know that she would have loved this. And we have friends and family who are here as well. Some of you are in school now. These are the kinds of relationships in school that last forever. My daughter Megan, her friend Sarah, these last forever. Mackenzie, Max Cendrowski is here. These relationships last forever. Doreen, Cindy Z, and the co-founder of Laugh Track, Cindy Glazer.
Take a bow.
Please stand up. Say hello. Teresa Savage, Woody Hill, Oscar, Big O, Oscar Hill, Woody Hill, my daughter Leslie, my brother, whose who's having his 64th birthday today, Greg. It's all about family and friends. Please, any question is fair game.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Where did you get your socks?
Me?
Yeah.
Either both.
I get mine at Dick's.
I'm not sure. These, my mustache socks, were a gift. I'm not sure where they came from my daughter. Okay. I blew that one. Good question, though. I haven't asked that. Yeah.
Do you know if there are any efforts to integrate the humor more formally into the healthcare system?
Yeah.
There have been efforts. Not as aggressive yet as, say, play therapy, especially in children's hospitals. Play therapists, there are recognized programs around the country in play therapy. Not as aggressive as art or vocational therapies that exist in many hospitals, both adult and pediatric. But there are places that have sort of humor therapy. Sometimes it comes in the form of clowns, which scare me to death. But I think we'll see more of this, particularly in hospitals that I think it's particularly needed on adult, so non-pediatric wards. I think we'll see more of this. And also, I think one of the things that we'll see, Michelle, is we'll see more study into the application of humor in disease intervention, or perhaps more importantly, disease prevention, as not the tool, but a tool. I think that's what these smaller studies that I focused on earlier point towards. There's a clear need for this. This field is wide open. So, any of you public health students that are looking for, this is really important stuff. If we understand this better, right?
Trying to research it from my end, just looking up some stuff. I know it was all these reports and studies would say there isn't a lot of hard data to do it. Yet, like I say, I saw results firsthand, and I knew, it was good. So I don't know what kind of studies can be done. Hopefully more stuff is doing it, because a lot of doctors, I feel, there's nothing to point to say, yes, we should institute this, or we should do this because this says so. Yeah. And hopefully it's step by step, but can gradually take more of a hold.
Can you talk about maybe the two of you, since you both have done stand-up, you both have worked in situational comedy television. Can you talk perhaps about that, at least in stand-up, where you're with an audience and that feeling of connecting? Because I feel as if humor, obviously you're there to be funny, right? And help people laugh. Do you think that they come in part wanting to laugh, and what you're doing is sort of, instead of inserting it, you're sort of drawing it out of them? And what's the difference between sort of a cold night and a hot night?
How many beers you have had? Yeah, obviously, if you're coming, not everybody, and it's not always the case. Sometimes, maybe people are dragged there. But for the most part, people are coming to a comedy club, coming out for an evening to laugh. And I think that's part of maybe what doesn't happen enough. I know with our events, people love our events because we don't really do fundraising at the events. We just have a great show, and people come out and go, that was the best fundraiser I ever went to, and we got to get out and laugh more often. We don't go out enough and laugh. So, maybe when you're talking about prescription or something, that it's that you have to, just like you have to exercise every day, you have to go make sure you laugh once a week. You know, it's hard to, you know, institute it into the doctor-patient relationship or that, or in healthcare, because to some degree, because laughter is something that's spontaneous and everyone has their own sense of humor on somebody. But if people will seek it out on their own, I think that'd be great. And yeah, people are there to laugh, and why, it's really a mystery. If we knew why some nights were good and some nights weren't, we would, you know, yeah, we would make sure every night was a good night.
Because it's a very addictive process for anyone who's done it in this sort of entertainment, especially comedy. There's nothing better than when you have the audience in the palm of your hand and it's a hot night, as you say, and you feel great, you're flowing. It's sort of like if you saw the Academy Awards last night, that feeling that Eddie, how do you say, who won for the best actor, his excitement in accepting his award, and that's the feel you get from a great night of doing stand-up. It was like, oh, couldn't have been better. The opposite is also true that I've experienced, where you are not connecting to the audience and nothing seems to be working, and time expands. Einstein was right. You know, 5 minutes, that becomes 25 minutes, and it's, when am I going to get off? This is terrible. And it's a terrible feeling, and so the highs are extremely high and the lows are extremely low. But I think the same happens for the audience. If you've gone to comedy shows, or I'm sure there are comics you like. There are other comics, I don't think he's funny, I don't think she's good at all. And there's others that you can't get enough of. And you'd see them anytime. You look them up on YouTube, you do whatever, just for a, you know, you're killing 10 minutes in between classes or something, and just to get a good laugh, and oh, that was funny, and even stuff you've heard before. And so there's always that kind of connective tissue with a comic, I think, and the reverse is true from a comic to an audience. Yeah.
How do you seek inspiration for your show?
For the Big Bang Theory?
Yep. Yep.
Well, seeking inspiration, it's kind of there already. We don't need much inspiration. These characters, the one thing since the show has started, in talking to people, it was funny. We thought it would just connect really with the nerd world at first, or the geeks that were out there. And we found out that everyone related to it. You could be a 60-year-old man, but at one time you had a hard time asking a girl to a dance or being able to talk to a girl. And that's the same thing these guys are going through. So everyone can relate to what happened in that show. And it's not so much that we have to seek out stuff, as we just have to kind of look around us. The writers kind of look around, they find stuff on YouTube, they talk to their kids, they hear stories about people in school, about, oh, this happened in this class, or this physics major did this, and the stories are out there, the characters are there. Everyone can relate to it. That's the great thing. You always talk to someone, they never admit it themselves. They go, oh, I know someone just like Sheldon. Or I know someone just like, they never said, oh, I'm just like him. It was always their best friend. But the stories are out there, and they relate to it. It's just a matter of pulling them and finding them and shaping them the right way.
What I've heard from Mark, too, is that this is not just a local sort of national phenomenon, that this show has spread internationally.
Yeah.
And would you mind sharing that story when you and Cindy were on the trip from Prague to Vienna?
Just a couple of years ago, we're on a train, and we're going from Prague to Vienna, and we're in with three people sitting across from us, and they're from Sri Lanka. And we're discussing things and talking about histories and what do you do, and they live in Cairo now. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. This is something I've never talked to anybody from Cairo. And I ask them the questions, and we go back and forth, and here they find out, oh, I work in television. And, oh, that's great. What kind of shows? Oh, comedy shows. And, well, what do you work on? Anything I've heard of? And I said, The Big Bang Theory. And they just went, and I was like, yeah, you've heard of it? And they go, that is our favorite show. And they knew all the episodes, and what is Sheldon like? And the questions started pouring out, and then they get their cameras out, and they're like, oh, can we take a picture? Will you take a picture with us? And they're doing selfies, and they go, we can't, and they start sending them to their friends back home. And we just realized, oh my God, it's a worldwide phenomenon, and it's hit all over, and like I said, it goes back to what I said, it touches everyone in a little different way. And it's great to be a part of that, and to see someone's face light up like that is really something. Yes.
My question's for Marc Cendrowski. Remember when we were kids and Dad was painting the back bedroom and you and Gary and I were tearing around the house and an entire gallon of paint got knocked over? Are you willing to publicly admit that was your fault?
Let me answer that.
And I have a follow-up question for Randy. I'm a big believer in laughter, the power of laughter to heal and health. My question is, when will medical schools, maybe they are already, starting to look more at this and teach some of this, as they, I think, should be doing with nutrition?
Yes.
Is any of this kind of thing being looked at in medical schools?
I think medical schools, unfortunately, still, there's a lot to learn, and they focus on disease
Right.
and treatment of disease.
Right.
I think this is where, and this is why I'm in, not only an MD, but a master's, have my master's in public health, is because I think public health matters even more. Because medical schools teach about disease, very little about wellness.
Right.
And there are countless individuals in the world, in our state, in our city, who know a heck of a lot about that, including your wife, Victoria,
Yeah.
who does, just awesome work. And so the therapies, the tools that are there should be applied in measured response and in appropriate doses according to individual need. There's a spectrum in terms of who needs what and when. I think it's up to us, in part in public health, to answer those questions and force the hand of medical schools to actually do some of these things. And that's why we have schools of public health.
I agree.
Nancy?
Well, I'm just wondering, as you're talking, Randy, it is true that in public health, whether we're talking about prevention or in disease management, we're looking at dose response. We're looking at if you exercise so much or you follow this diet over time, you're going to get a positive response. I'm just wondering whether medicine and public health have to kind of work with communication and technology and everything and look at apps that would, on a regular dose, provide people with a type of humor that they identify relates to them a sense of laughter, and you...
A whoopee cushion app.
Yeah, I mean, literally, you get a text, it's time for you to, and you measure whether there's a positive physiologic response to having a certain regular dose of humor.
That's interesting. I mean, I think that the app is, just hearing this for the first time, I think that's a wonderful idea. I imagine it'd be a matter of finding the students from the computer science area and stuff that would, because I connect with a couple of creative writing students to see what happens with that. I think that's.
And again, it would have to have. I mean, I envision, as you pointed out, so that people have different senses of humor, different things, but there would be a menu of available things, and
like a Fitbit kind
of.
Yeah.
And I think the corollary to that question, Mark, would be, are you given any sense as to how much folks are watching The Big Bang Theory or clips of The Big Bang Theory utilizing their smartphones? That, I think, is akin to more sort of personal dosing, personal need.
Yeah, I mean, part of the beauty of the timing of this show right now, when we started 8 years ago, you still had the standard rating process, overnight ratings and how many millions of people would watch it and your share holds and all that. And we realized early on, we were one of the first shows that became the most downloaded show. We realized kids young kids in college age and below, or anyone 25 below, they weren't sitting at home on a Thursday night at 8 o'clock and turning on the TV. They were watching it the next day on Hulu or downloading on their computers, watching it in class instead of paying attention. Kids were telling us, you know, that's when they watched it. And it became, actually now the ratings programs, they have what they call a +3 and a +7, and we were at the forefront of it, where we'll do an overnight rating of, we'll have 18 million people watch it, let's say, and then they add a +3, because they can track over the next 3 days how many people have downloaded it, watched it on their phones, or watched it, you know, while they're working out at the gym, or whenever they can, and we add another 4 to 5 million people. Which is an incredible number, and that's, but people watching on your own, which is, I think, is a great, lends itself to what you're saying, being able to watch it when you want to watch it, when you need a pick-me-up, you know, at the end of the day, when your boss has been on you the whole time, and it's like, oh my God, just so I'm not going home and yelling at the family and the kids, is just watch something on the way, or listen to something on the way home. If the, you know, whether it be Jack Benny or Richard Pryor or George, you know, anyone on the way home, and just to lighten the mood and make it better.
Cindy?
I just had a question for Marc Jaffe, because I was curious if your wife Karen, if her doctors have seen, compared to other patients with Parkinson's, if her ability to look at, you know, this and see the humor in it with you has helped her in her fight and her, you know, ability to work with the disease and counter some of those.
Well, I mean, we think it has, and the hard thing as far as asking a doctor the issue of Parkinson's is, they say, if you've seen one person with Parkinson's, you've seen one person with Parkinson's. It's such an individualized disease as to how anybody progresses on their own, but no matter what your progression might have been, it's always going to be better if you have an optimistic attitude, because it is so dependent on all those things, your willingness to exercise, to do dance, to go to, you know, whatever it is, and those things come with optimism and keeping a sense of humor about that stuff. So her doctor, without questions, encourages that attitude and a sense of humor, but it's hard to quantify compared to, you know, to know that she would have been here if she hadn't taken that attitude.
Yeah.
I speak from personal experience, and I think we've talked about the medical side of this, but let's talk about the patient orientation side. From my own personal experience, one of my advice that I've given to myself and given to other people is, when you're going into the hospital, keep your sense of humor, because you'll get treated better and you'll fix faster. And I think that's an easier sell, because you do patient orientation. Somebody's coming in for a cancer operation or whatever. Tell them, keep their sense of humor. They get treated better. Who wants to deal with a grouse? Oh, I feel terrible, I'm going to die, and, you know, yada, yada, yada. Bullshit. Come on. Step it up. Take a look at the bright side of things. You can't teach doctors because they're so serious. I mean, they really are. They're just all into themselves. But if you tell a patient that they'll get treated better, that they'll heal faster if they keep their own sense of humor, and that's something that's a heck of a lot easier to teach and to instill in people. You know, and you can instill that in families. Husbands and wives can reinforce it with one another. You can do it with your children. So to me, the attack here is to the patient, is through the patient, not through the doctor. I think only because I think it's easier.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing your experiences, and I agree with you. I think that you know, ways in which we can allow folks to see us in a more human light closes the social distance. My brother and I talk about this all the time. If you happen to go into the hospital, make sure people see you with, if you can, have somebody with you, have a friend with you, have a family member, have an advocate with you. Allow people to see you as someone that's more akin to their own brother or their own sister, their mother, their father, their daughter, their son. And I think humor is one of those tools that can be helpful. I have had so many patients in my life who I've had the privilege of caring for them and their families, children even, teenagers who have died of illnesses like cystic fibrosis and cancer, who I felt they were more consoling to me. I mean, I was working hard for them, but it was an honor for me to work with them. And I think that your recommendation is a good one. I do think it's a two-way street. I do think it's a two-way street. And what you say about doctors is a reflection of exactly what Dwight was mentioning. We need to do more with these guys and gals who are doctors.
But
we need to lighten them up a little bit.
They're starting to learn the technologies, the procedures.
It's a slow process, but I think your orientation is definitely the right one. So, all the way in the back.
So this patient-doctor relationship has me thinking of our patch Adams, Robin Williams. And obviously what happened with him recently has brought a lot of attention to mental health and I mean, that's pretty huge across the world, and I wonder how much impact that had on the film community.
Well, you know, you can speak towards the comedy side of it. I mean, certainly in the film and television world, it's kind of hard to describe the loss, because the surprise of it too. This was the last person in the world you thought had problems. No, you know, you always, the neighbor, oh, he seemed like a nice guy, and I never saw any problems. You always hear these stories, but he has affected a lot of people, and he was just on a show last year, and I knew people that worked on the shows down on the Fox lot, and they loved working with him. And it was, again, people started asking questions. Oh, the show was canceled. Did that help lead to his suicide, depression? And I don't know if there's a correct answer for that, but it's affected everybody greatly. And I know a lot of comedians feel the same way. And a lot of comedians, as Marc will say, are not stable to begin with. I mean, step back and has thought about it and looked at themselves just a little bit deeper, and it's like, don't let that happen.
Well, from the comedy side, you know, certainly a lot of great respect for Robin Williams, but much more so, it was impactful in the Parkinson's community. You know, it was a shock. I remember we were actually sitting at a board meeting of Shaking Laughter when somebody got the, you know, oh my God, Robin Williams died. And then we find out a few days later that he had Parkinson's. And that really sent a shockwave through the Parkinson's community because, you know, I mean, as much as anything, you're sad that here's a guy who, you know, we're, as much as you don't want somebody to have to deal with Parkinson's, to have the advocates, you know, I mean, what Michael J. Fox has done is just incredible. And, you know, Muhammad Ali, and, you know, you start to name some of the people who have been advocates and have done amazing things to help us get this disease, you know, find a cure and advocate for those who do have it. So to lose, to kind of be teased with, oh, here could have been somebody who would have just really raised awareness and could have done so much. And then at the same time, he was doing something kind of by virtue of the fact that the diagnosis did come out, and we're a little thankful for that. It ended up that day, you know, my wife and I have become like the go-to people in Cleveland, and all of a sudden the news is at our house interviewing us about, oh, Robin Williams had Parkinson's. But the thing that people don't realize is that depression is often an early symptom of Parkinson's, even before the Parkinson's itself has been diagnosed through the various movement issues. So not necessarily that was the case with Robin Williams. I mean, he may have, his depression may have been, I guess, you know, garden variety depression that you know, came from somewhere else. But there is the possibility, and with many people who suffer from depression, it it turns out later on, we find that they have Parkinson's, and that's what was causing their depression. It's not the idea that you have Parkinson's that depresses you. It is the actual brain and chemical changes going on in your brain. So in some ways he helped make us aware of that, and we thank him for it, but we do miss him both as creatively and for his humor and for what he might have brought to the Parkinson's struggle.
Yes.
So I'm a student in the School of Public Health, and one of the things I'm really interested in is how cultural constructions of gender, so like what it means to be masculine, what it means to be feminine, contributes to certain health risk behaviors, whether or not it's substance use or depression. And I was just kind of curious to see if you guys had any ideas or thoughts on how humor, whether or not it's television or just comedy or building awareness, kind of like your organization, how that can create, I guess, an area for discussion about issues of gender identity, and to kind of create some sort of social change or movement towards that. I know it's a really long process.
That's a loaded question.
Randy.
Randy, you want to handle it?
You're the guy in public health.
Yeah.
You practice here. I was just thinking, Mark, of the example that you gave so long before you were born, there was this show called All in the Family. Right? And All in the Family was a show about a family, working class, hard working class family, and the dad, Carol O'Connor, Archie Bunker, was a very sort of meat and potato, hard working, black, and everything was black and white, and rather bigoted, in his opinion, rather bigoted, very bigoted, you know, entrenched, sadly in some ways entrenched, yet very common sort of interactions with the outside world would change him. And the example Mark gave was the kiss that Sammy Davis Jr., who was black, and Archie didn't really have very many black friends, but the kiss that Sammy Davis Jr. gave to Archie Bunker, Carol O'Connor on that show, it was, I think, part of a social change movement. And I think so too. There are episodes, and you talked about gender issues. I think that there have been some television shows. I can think of a couple TV shows or shows that are carried by various networks that you can, you know, Netflix, etc., that have helped the United States in ways that I think are very positive.
I think as far as the gender equality portion, it's certainly different than it was in the 60s. It's gotten a little bit better every year. As far as like the Directors Guild, there's always a problem every year because we still have it's still dominated by white males on who do it. And you slowly and piece by piece try to change that. We have more women, more minorities involved. We have actually, you know, groups that they form there to push for more gender equality and racial equality and hiring of directors and everybody. But it's certainly much better than it was 30, 40 years ago, and we're hopefully going to where it's better 30, 40 years from now. It's certainly, as you're saying, specific shows, you know, you never saw, you know, women, they were the secretaries and they were the dumb blondes maybe on a show, and you still see that, but you also have shows like Cagney and Lacey where, you know, at the time was very groundbreaking, 2 women detectives playing the leads, which had never happened before on television. And now it's a, you know, now you can see shows like that anywhere, or someone as strong as Tina Fey basically creating and starting a show, which is something that would not have happened 30 years ago. And the strength that her and Amy Poehler have gotten, you know, and hopefully the future keeps going that way. In the same way we've talked about maybe an app to make us laugh a little bit each day makes us a little better, is that 50 years from now that you start studying something that forces people to read this and write a paper that says, yeah, we need to do stuff like this.
But you're right. I think we have a long way to go still, right? Last night at the Academy Awards, when the Best Supporting Actress stood up and said, you know, look, wouldn't it be nice in the United States if we had, you know, sort of equal pay for equal work? You know, some of these things are just absolutely stunning that we're even having a conversation still. But we can help, in public health, push these things along to where they should be.
Yes.
Are there any situations, especially in medicine, but also in the rest of life, where you would not make light of it, not make it into a comedic situation, like through retelling or make a joke about it?
Personally, or you're saying in general, is there a limit?
Person.
Well, I think there's always a limit. We certainly, on the shows we do, you have to tread lightly. We gauge responses during the week in rehearsals and stuff. We just did an episode that dealt with Wolowitz's mother passed away, and it was a very touching episode, and it was funny. And what we were trying to find was that balance to make people laugh at appropriate times, but when it came to the time not to laugh about it and how you treated death amongst a family member or amongst friends, it was not easy. And we had to gauge it all week, and we still didn't even know until we shot it in front of the audience. We had reached a point where we thought it was going to work and it was comfortable, but until we did it that first time in front of the audience, you didn't know if they were going to get up and walk out, or how they were going to respond, and they responded the way we want. But you always have to have, you know, some stopgap measures.
I think, I don't know if I said it when I was talking earlier, but we've said it in the past, comedy is pain plus time. And, you know, you can look back on things and laugh at them at some point in the future, no matter how painful they were. And I think with those of us in the business who make our living in comedy, that time is condensed. And so, which is why a lot of times you'll see comedians make a joke about some tragic event and then it won't get a laugh, and the too soon joke was it too soon. And the reason they're able to say it, they're able to test it out and go, okay, I'm going to go there, because for us it's a much more condensed time that you need to relieve yourself from the pain. And I think also those of us who do it get some relief, as I was talking about the therapeutics of it, from going there. So actually by taking that step, we are able to help ourselves deal with whatever issue it is. That's not to say there's no time. I mean, there is for everybody, and it depends on what it is. So it's one thing for you personally, and so I think everybody has their own limit of where that is. And then there's the other thing for when it's okay for the public, and that is something that you only start to learn by actually tossing something out there.
Yeah, from a healthcare perspective, I think that there's, you know, the conversations about stages of grief. And I think, I would imagine in comedy, it may be shortened, but there are stages of grief where maybe in the first 2 stages, and you don't touch it. The same is true in personal relationships. I know that, for example, you saw the original Big Bang picture up there. We, in our senior year in the college here at the U of M, an apartment on Tappan Street, we laughed until we cried almost every single day. I mean, it was just nothing but jocularity and humor, and, you know, just great, just good fun.
How are your grades, Red?
Yeah. It took me 8 years to get through here. But, you know, I can remember when Marc's dad passed away. I mean, that was sort of, I think it was 83, 84, 85. And when you have a relationship, close relationship, that's always funny. I didn't know how to, I was relatively young. I was still, working my way through medical school. And so you kind of put that sort of humor on pause for a while. It was great to see him come back from California. It's great to see him, but we missed it, and we needed. A lot of us were there. We, we're just hoping that he would get over that. But I can remember still to this day that was just felt so foreign for us to be in that space. I was still young and had a lot to learn, but anyway, it's time.
Yeah.
And maturity. Thank you. So I think what we'll do is wrap things up. We're going to be around for a while. Marc Cendrowski has to jet back to California tonight. I want to invite you to come on up to meet folks, to say hi. Sleeping with your gynecologist. The books are right up here. You want to have a great
$10,
read.
5 goes to Shaking with Laughter.
5 goes to Shaking with Laughter. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank our 2 special guests for coming.
Yay.